안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 잠시 후 8시부터 24회 세계지식포럼이 시작될 예정입니다. 참석자분들께서는 모두 입장하셔서 자리에 앉아주시면 감사하겠습니다. 물론 1층에도 빈자리가 있습니다. 2층에 계신 분들 1층으로 내려와 주시면 좋겠습니다. 감사합니다. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chang Dae-hwan, Executive Chairman of the World Knowledge Forum and Chairman of Megyoung Media Group, Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, Hatoyama Yukio, the 93rd Prime Minister of Japan, Esko Aho, the 37th Prime Minister of Finland, and other dignitaries are now entering the hall. Please welcome them with a big round of applause. 제24회 세계지식포럼 개막식이 곧 시작됩니다. 참석하신 모든 분들 착석해 주시기 바라겠습니다. 감사합니다.
There have been crises in every era of history, and humanity has overcome them with knowledge and technology.
And we know that technology is addressing increasingly the world's greatest challenges. And certainly technology has a lot of answers for those challenges. And when we think about challenges,
it's not a question of survival. You are about to enter, I think, like the greatest golden age of human possibility, technological development, economic growth. It's like, I think it's going to be quite fantastic.
Now, it's time to move beyond this unprecedented crisis and embark on another challenge for a whole new world. In 2000, the World Knowledge Forum began the new chapter in the history of global knowledge revolution. In the 24 years since then, the World Knowledge Forum has gathered the insights of the world's leading knowledge creators and opinion leaders on the year's most salient issues around the globe. Serving as a place of knowledge sharing that disseminates the solutions for humanity's common prosperity and sustainable growth. In the year 2023, pessimism and hope coexist in the world. The triple shocks of geopolitics, economy, and climate change led to greater anxiety. While there is also hope that advances in science and technology will save humanity from these challenges. This year's World Knowledge Forum focuses on the flow of advanced and innovative technologies that will, like a bursting dam, bring forth rapid and sweeping changes to humanity's lives and survival. The Techno Big Bang. The forum imagines the world transformed by AI and quantum computing, which are core technologies that will fundamentally transform human civilization, and explores how humanity can remain in control. The forum explores the future of biotechnology, the potential for reversing the biological clock, and robotics that overcomes the limitations of labor. Furthermore, the forum discusses climate technologies to achieve carbon neutrality and the ways to overcome barriers in climate trade. A remarkable evolution of advanced technology that will innovate the lives of humanity itself. On the shoulders of giants, we open the door to a better future. the 24th World Knowledge Forum.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to World Knowledge Forum 2023. I'm Kim Hee-kyung, head of the International News Department at MBN. It's a great pleasure and an honor for me to once again be your host for this forum. Now let us formally begin the opening ceremony of the 24th World Knowledge Forum. First, I'd like to present a video message from President Yoon Suk-yeol of the Republic of Korea to celebrate the opening of today's forum. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a listen.
매경 미디어 그룹의 제24회 세계지식포럼 개최를 진심으로 축하드립니다. 뜻깊은 자리를 마련해 주신 장대환 매경 미디어 그룹 회장님과 매일경제신문, MBN 임직원분들께 감사드립니다. 아울러 이 자리를 함께 빛내주신 하토야마 유키오 전 일본 총리님, 스티브 워즈니악 애플 공동 창업자님과 론 크레인 전 백악관 비서실장님, 폴 로머 뉴욕대 교수님을 비롯한 참석자 여러분께 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 이번 세계 지식 포럼에서 다뤄지는 AI, 양자 컴퓨팅, 바이오 등은 국가의 미래는 물론 인류 전체의 자유 확장과 후생 증진에 큰 영향을 주는 첨단 기술 산업입니다. 저 역시 해외 순방 때마다 첨단 과학 기술을 선도하고 있는 대학을 방문하고 석학들과의 대화를 통해 각 분야의 첨단 기술이 AI와 융합하며 빠른 속도로 진화하고 있음을 확인하고 있습니다. 우리 정부는 AI, 양자 컴퓨팅 등 12대 첨단 전략 기술을 선정하여 집중 육성하고 있습니다. 특히 반도체, 디스플레이, 2차 전지, 미래차, 바이오, 로봇 등 6대 분야는 2026년까지 민관 투자가 550조 원 규모로 이루어질 수 있도록 지원하고 있습니다. 아울러 정부는 미국, 일본 등 핵심 가치를 공유하는 기술 선도국과의 첨단 기술 파트너십을 강화하고 국제 공동 연구 개발과 인적 교류를 확대하여 과학 혁신을 주도해 나갈 것입니다. 올해 세계 지식 포럼에서 첨단 과학 기술 혁신에 대한 깊이 있는 논의가 이루어지기를 기대합니다. 정부도 최선을 다해 뛰겠습니다. 다시 한번 참석해 주신 모든 분들께 감사드리며 가정의 건강과 행복이 가득하시기를 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank President Yoon Suk-yeol for preparing that meaningful message despite his very busy schedule. Next, Dr. Chang Dae-hwan, Executive Chairman of the World Knowledge Forum and Chairman of Megyeong Media Group, will present us with his opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Chang Dae-hwan with a big round of applause.
Esteemed guests, welcome to the 24th World Knowledge Forum. Finally, we are out of the pandemic that has plagued humanity for more than 3 years. However, before we can breathe a sigh of relief, we find ourselves facing yet another challenge. Supply chain issues, which gained prominence during the pandemic, have now become a matter of geopolitical confrontation. Furthermore, the question of how we should embrace the concept of artificial intelligence, which has begun to encroach into areas unique to humans, has also become a universal challenge for humanity. This year's World Knowledge Forum will serve as the starting point of our efforts to find solutions to these newly emerging problems facing humanity. In 1202, Italian mathematician Fibonacci introduced the concept of the number zero, invented by Indians and used by the Arab world to Europe. He was influenced by the Islamic mathematician Al-Khwarizmi. The number zero established itself in European society, overcoming resistance from the Christian church, which rejected the existence of zero, stating that God was perfect and would never leave a blank number. In the late 17th century, German mathematician Leibniz used the concept of zero to create the binary system. Leibniz's binary system is said to have been inspired by the Chinese idea of yin and yang, so it can perhaps be called the culmination of Indian, Chinese, and European wisdom. On November 20th, 1947, Bell Telephone Laboratories unveiled the little three-legged thing to the world, the transistor, an electronic implementation of the concept of binary. Time magazine reported the finding as the little brain cell created by human hand, knowing intuitively the massive changes that transistors would bring. A year later, American mathematician and computer scientist Claude Shannon also applied the concept of the binary system to devise a way to convey information digitally. As such, the digital age had begun. The semiconductor revolution that began with the transistor and evolved into the AI revolution had two directions in terms of technological innovation: integrated and parallel. Integration is at the heart of the semiconductor revolution. Semiconductors have evolved according to this law and now contain billions of transistors on a single chip. It is ChatGPT that proved the power of the parallel. It revolutionized the amount of parallel processing in smart devices, allowing them to produce new information. NVIDIA could grow from a mere gaming graphics card company to a company worth over $1 trillion because its founder, Jensen Huang, recognized the value of parallelism. He saw the potential for GPUs that could simultaneously process large amounts of data to be used in every industry beyond gaming and applied it to AI. Innovators from Fibonacci to ChatGPT's Sam Altman have been creating new values on the ideas of those who came before them. They have stood on the shoulders of giants to reach new heights. The fact that the term algorithm, which refers to how AI works, comes from mathematical genius Al-Khwarizmi proves this. Over the past 75 years, one thing has remained constant. Disruptive innovation has taken place in the magnetic field of Silicon Valley. Kevin Kelly, executive editor of Wired magazine, once argued that innovation takes place gradually, sternly, and inevitably within what he calls the technion. Technion is an interconnected ecosystem of technologies encompassing education, culture, and science. Silicon Valley has become the great technion of our time. As countries compete for semiconductors, we ask, whose side should we be on? But we need to change the question. Instead of asking, whose side are you on? We should ask, whose side is the technium of sustainable innovation? I propose a Grand Technium Alliance for sustainable innovation and growth in South Korea. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to continue my speech. Thousands of years of human technological progress are now blooming in full, and these advanced cutting-edge technologies are now bringing a great variety of changes to our lives. Today, we are joined by Mr. Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple Company. Where are you? Say hello. Given that we are graced by Mr. Wozniak's presence, I think it is fitting that we begin our discussion with company Apple. Apple became the first company in the world to surpass $3 trillion in market capitalization this spring. Its stock price has jumped 13 times in the last decade. Apple's market capitalization is 1.7 times larger than the gross domestic product of South Korea. As you know, Apple launched the Silicon Valley Technium with digital products like the Macintosh, iPod, iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch. When Apple introduced its products, the world's reaction was probably similar to the shock people felt when they saw the advances in generative AI. But AI is just the beginning. We are seeing the likes of quantum computing, robotics, C-Tech, bio, and other innovative and disruptive new technologies, pushing the boundaries of what humans have imagined for thousands of years. Now, the Techno Big Bang era is with us. To survive in the Techno Big Bang, we must pay attention to the Grand Technium Alliance. There's a company called ASML. It is headquartered in the Netherlands and is the only company in the world producing EUV lithography systems. Without ASML's EUV equipment, Samsung, TSMC, and other semiconductor companies cannot produce cutting-edge semiconductors. ASML was a small company that started in a warehouse in Veldhoven, the Netherlands, in 1984. At the time, the United States and Japan were engaged in an escalating trade dispute. In an effort to keep Japan in check, 3 organizations each contributed key technologies to ASML. Philips in the Netherlands provided electronics technology. Carl Zeiss in Germany provided optics technology. And the US National Laboratories provided the original lithography technology, which is the process of etching circuits onto semiconductor wafers. As a result, ASML has grown into a multinational company with 38,000 employees in 20 countries around the world. I brought up ASML because it is the prime example of a Grand Technium Alliance. The Technium forms giant network-like structures that evolve as they converge with each other. That's why no one company or country can monopolize them. If Philips or Carl Zeiss tried to do everything alone, they would not have been able to grow as ASML had done. Throughout history, many great powers have pressured other countries militarily or economically for their own interest. Korea, located between great powers, has always experienced such geopolitical tensions. However, in this Techno Big Bang, it is very important to build technium alliances. To do so, we need a close connection with irreplaceable entities, not the most powerful ones. State leaders and corporate CEOs should consider building technium alliances based on core technological advantages. In this year's World Knowledge Forum, our era's greatest minds and global experts will put you on the shoulders of giants. Now, stand on the shoulders of giants and take on the wisdom and knowledge that will take you through this age of Techno Big Bang. Ladies and gentlemen, expand your knowledge. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that speech, Dr. Chang Dae-hwan. This concludes our official opening ceremony, but before we move on to our first session, I'd like to acknowledge some of our esteemed guests that have joined us this morning. We are honored to have with us today Mr. Kim Gi-hyun, Chairman of the ruling People Power Party. 김기현 대표님 참석해 주셔서 감사합니다. Thank you very much for being here. Mr. Park Kwang-won, floor leader of the Democratic Party of Korea, is honoring us with his presence. 감사합니다. Mr. Oh Se-hoon, mayor of Seoul, has taken time out of his very busy schedule to join us this morning. 시장님 대단히 감사합니다. Mr. Chu Kyung-ho, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and Economy of Korea, is here with us. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. 대단히 감사합니다. Mr. Choi Tae-won, Chair of the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry, has been kind enough to join us this morning. 고맙습니다. Mr. Ryu Jin, Chair of the Federation of Korea Industries, is also joining us this morning. Thank you very much, sir. 대단히 감사합니다. Mr. Son Kyung-sik, Chair of Korea Enterprises Federation, has been with us from the beginning. Thank you, sir, for joining us again this morning. 고맙습니다. And Mr. Gu Ja-yeol, Chair of the Korea International Trade Association, has also honored us with his presence. Thank you very much. 함께해 주셔서 대단히 감사합니다. Once again, we thank you for your presence at the 24th World Knowledge Forum, and also for your commitment to advancing knowledge not only in Korea but around the globe. We hope you enjoy the rest of the forum. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please allow us just a few more moments to rearrange the stage for our first session. Thank you very much. 네, 첫 번째 세션이 곧 시작될 예정입니다. 모두 자리에 앉아주시면 감사하겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin our first session, Humanity on the Shoulders of Giants, a conversation with Steve Wozniak. As you know, Mr. Wozniak co-founded Apple with Steve Jobs and basically changed the world as we knew it. Ms. Choi Soo-yeon, CEO of Naver Corporation, will serve as moderator for this session. So let me now turn the mic over to Ms. Choi. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today at the opening plenary of World Knowledge Forum 2023. I feel really privileged to be part of this meaningful gathering, as it's my personal honor for me to be moderating today's discussion with none other than Mr. Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple and a living legendary icon of the digital revolution. Thank you for your time.
It's my honor to be here.
Thank you. So now, you may have heard the famous saying, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Mr. Wozniak, so you are undoubtedly one of those giants who laid the foundation for many contemporary innovators. Without your groundbreaking invention, which kickstarted the personal computer, companies like Naver might not be here today. So the theme of this year's forum is also Techno Big Bang, Humanity on the Shoulders of Giants. So before we dive into our discussion, I wanted to ask you one question. Is there a specific individual, whether a modern-day entrepreneur or historical figure, who immediately comes to your mind when you hear this phrase?
My gosh, all my life it was the famous scientists and thinkers and mathematicians and creators. Largely, I focus back at the beginning of technology, which I was involved in, digital technology. And one time I was at an auction house and I got to hold in my hands a real printout, a print of the early Turing papers. And I almost cried. It was like the most emotional thing for me going on there. And then we had people like Mauchly and von Neumann that defined the architecture of the computer. Von Neumann was at Princeton and so was Einstein. And how did Einstein think so far out of the normal thinking of his time? The way the brain works, those are the sort of people that really inspire me the most. Modern day digital technology, well, we've gone through so many phases. We started with the personal computers, and thankfully that was a good start, and it was decades before we got up to, eventually we got to like mouse-driven machines. That's a remote control. Use your hand on a mouse and a cursor on a screen moves. It's a remote control. It's not as direct as touching the thing you're interested in, the thing you're looking at it. But this was a huge change for society because all of a sudden a computer was about the user. A computer could help you. The user didn't have to memorize lots of esoteric commands and programming languages. The user had something they wanted to do and they could just look at a screen and drag icons into a trash can or into a folder. The user could now see an icon that looked like a paintbrush. Click on it and you could paint. And this was like so human because things were intuitive. They made sense. Today, I just like things to work, and when they're not working, I say, I did all the right things for a human being that would be intuitive to a normal human being, but it just didn't work. And that's like the biggest thing that bothers me because I don't want things to bother me. I don't want frowns, I just want smiles. So we've gotten here. Now, the iPhone started a real trend towards almost everywhere you go, everything is touchscreen. Everything's touchscreen. We got rid of a lot of digital things, digital keyboards and all that. And I have a lot of trouble in my cars because a car is kind of bouncy and a car is noisy. And this whole touchscreen world, it's like it doesn't work as naturally as just a normal volume control. So I do complain about some of the things that the digital world brought us just for economics. And that brings us to the big question always, is it, money and people that comes up in everything? So I look at, Steve Jobs bringing us the iPhone is largely responsible for the world we know today in technology, and yet he was really not at the start of computers. He didn't understand computers. He understood people, needs, lifestyle, what's a good product. And his real introduction was the iPod, beautiful little device with music in your hand. And music is always important to us because it's emotional. So we got to look more than just logical steps that people take, but also into how they understand emotions of users.
Yeah, thank you. As you mentioned before, you and Apple ushered in the new era of personal computers in the 20th century. Since then, we have witnessed a shift to mobile, and now we are experiencing yet another paradigm of AI. What do you believe is essential for individuals and enterprises to successfully navigate such paradigm shift, turning it into an opportunity rather than crisis?
Well, all I can do is look back at my past, Apple's past history of technology, and every time we had a new technology, like before the personal computer, no human being on their own could touch a computer. It was owned by big companies that cost millions of dollars. You could even learn to write some programs, but it was their computer. It was never like your own. And we took a big step saying that technology is going to help a person. A human being can do so much, but with technology they can do more. With a hammer, a human being can do more than without a hammer. With a bicycle wheel, they can do more than without the bicycle wheel. And computer, a smart person could come up with ideas that they want solutions to and write programs on their own computer. And it was affordable. And really, the intent behind the personal computer that I had was to let the masses become more the masters of their own future and their own destiny. And that was one of the large reasons. Also, things like education would be enhanced, and the geek who knew about computers would be important, and these were other great ideas. Now we move ahead forward, and I described the early Lisa computer from Apple with a mouse and menus and all that. And that let people do things, ordinary people that weren't computer experts now had real access to the tools to make a great world. The spreadsheet, for example, gave them ability to be programmers without knowing they were programmers. And that was a big step. Every step in technology gives us more than we had before. Silicon Valley, the processors got faster and faster. Instead of one transistor or 10 transistors or 1,000 transistors, now we're making 60 billion transistors on a little chip of silicon for the same price, as was pointed out in the presentation. And those are little electronic neurons, electronic brain cells, as was said. And we've come so far, and that enabled us to have better displays that were more realistic and lifetime and visual, and movies. Things like movies could now be done digitally in computers through programs. This gave a lot more power to the world, and I was always for, from when I was very young, before we ever imagined having computers, it was like when we created technology that helped people do things they couldn't do before, we were moving the world forward, and that change is good. That change is always good. If it's bad, people will shy away from it. And now we're talking, we've gone through phases of a lot of algorithms. The cloud took over. The big companies that run things took over. And through the cloud, the business models are what changed more than anything. Rather than buying a product that helps you, you subscribe to a service that you have to keep getting updates and you have to keep paying for, and you don't know what you're paying for what you're getting. That sort of came about, but it enabled certain things that the advantages the cloud has, such as making sure that your data is up to date and that it's good and watching you a bit. But we've also introduced a lot of the problems, especially with the social web. There was a movie called Social Dilemma. And we're just being monitored. We're like not important compared to the people that run those companies. They're thinking, how can we take advantage of a lot of users to make a lot of money? And there's less focus on what's really good in society, good for human beings. Not as much as I'd like. AI is sort of the most recent advance. over just plain algorithms that kind of tell you, oh, you'll probably want to go home, or here's how to navigate a route in your car. Now we've got AI that is a more trainable form of digital technology, because we knew a long time ago, ages ago, we could have a machine play 1 billion games of chess because computers are so fast. No human being could play 1 billion games of chess and remember it all. And so eventually, game after game after game, we had machines that would beat the people just by raw brute force power. Make them play these games billions of times and find the ways that work. But now, with generative AI, we've got things like ChatGPT, but along with it, we see a lot of problems. We see article after article after article where some bad information came, and the people who created these tools, these AI tools, you know, including ones like Jeffrey Hinton or whatever, he won the Nobel Prize of Computing. It's called the ACM Turing Award. Unbelievable if anyone can ever get that. And he helped develop Google's AI, and he left. And he said it should be regulated. We have to be careful what we're doing. I saw so many examples of AI, what it can do, and how it can basically make somebody appear much smarter than they are, but it's not real intelligence. It's still a set of rules. It knows how to very effectively pull what has been created by others and present it in a form that is very realistic seeming, but easily prone to errors. There's no check on the errors. I think, well, gosh, reporters get news, but you need an editor to make sure that it's conveyed properly to the audience. Some human should be the editor when AI generates this stuff. Look at the deep fakes that are taking a lot of money from people, really tricking them. It's one of the most horrible types of spam and phishing there is. Deep fakes where someone sounds like a relative of yours, same voice, same intonations, and what do we do about that sort of thing? It's bad people. It's not AI that's bad. It's people can use it. And those bad people that want to use us now have a new tool that amplifies their abilities for wrongdoing. And we should be aware of this. Now, a lot of people use the word regulation. It should be regulated. A lot of the top people in the field have come out and said AI should be regulated. In other words, raw on its own, it's not trustable. Truth is so important. And you don't know if you're getting truth if it sounds good. And so it should be regulated, but nobody says, here's what the regulation should be. It's just one word that starts with R, regulation. There should be some controls to keep it in place, because that's how we keep things in place. I have pointed out how the regulation of AI should look in a perfect world. We're not going to get it because the people in charge of AI are the ones that are creating it to make money off of it. But you should know, if you're reading something, was it created by AI? You know, even some good portion of it created by AI. You should be told. Secondarily, you should be able to ask which AI. There are many different AIs, and those AIs are trained differently on different parts of sources that are on the internet. And God knows what's going to happen once the AI reports now become part of the sources that they're learning from. They don't create on their own. They just find good information, put it into a reasonable sound. So you should know what your AI was trained on, which parts of the internet, which websites, and what was it told not to avoid certain things, to avoid stereotypes and all, and discrimination. And you should also be able to be told what question was asked to give me the report I'm reading. Maybe I asked the question, but sometimes if you ask a slightly different question, you get a totally opposite answer to AI. That needs some human interpretation to figure out what's real. We still need some humans involved here. Like all technology, in many stages, ever since the Industrial Revolution, every step of technology, they say, oh, it's going to take jobs away. For some reason, we seem to all have our jobs. So I'm not worried about that. It's just they might change their form in some cases, but we're going to need a lot of humans to monitor. Most importantly, my form of regulation is like reading academic journals. You read an article, it's been peer approved by human beings, and it goes through, and you'll see dozens or hundreds of little reference numbers. And you go down the reference numbers and they say, here's where we got this information, this sentence. Here's where we got that sentence. Here's where we got this statement. We're trying to build a logical conclusion. AI should be responsible. You should be able to say, this came from AI, and there's little reference numbers, and I can see where on the web, what article it pulled out a bit of the information that it's feeding me.
Thank you. So you mentioned about the importance of the regulation of AI and how to treat.
Yes, and regulation is just part of, if we have new technology, which we do all the time, we have people that create great technology, and my gosh, it's going to help us live better lives in the future. But you have a responsibility when you're creating that kind of a powerful force, responsibility to look at it and think about it even before you release it. What if we had designed the internet knowing that spam would come and designed it in a way there could be no spam, no untraceable sources that you can't reach? Wouldn't that be great? Do any of you get less or more spam these days?
So could you give us any advice how to balance between AI innovation and the regulation without
Yes.
stifling any innovations?
How to balance between that? I don't think there is any balancing. I don't know of real strong regulation that's in effect anywhere that really tries to clarify what is true and what is not. And I don't think any company in the world that's developing, a company is, it's not a bunch of good people. It's not 20 good people that want to do something good for the world, because almost all these big companies that make a difference are public companies. That means their owners are all the people that buy stock. And the owners that buy stock, they don't know anything about the technology that's being evolved. They don't know about the choices that can be made. All they want is to make money and their stock to go up. So really, the people that work inside of a company, no matter how good-minded they are, they still have to be beholden to money first, profits first.
Then let's shift gears a bit. Beyond the US and China, Korea stands out as one of the very few countries with a robust Gen AI industry and ecosystem. So for instance, in Naver, we believe it is important to maintain our own AI technology tailored to our language and culture, especially in an era where AI directly impacts on people's lives. So as the founder of Apple and an industry leader, what are your thoughts on diversity in the tech ecosystem? Do you think it is achievable in the current landscape?
Is what achievable?
Achievable, yeah.
Well, yeah, benefiting us. I mean, I look at it like, well, a company, to get users, you want to convince them that you are a good company, doing good things for them. You're going to give them more power, make them look better to their friends, give them more intelligence, more data to deal with. And that's all good. But you should sit back and say, I'm going to get more users if I also have a reputation for things like certain data, certain accesses of data. You can pay me some money and I will not pass any information on as to what you do, what you use your AI for example. Apple kind of has a reputation somewhat along those lines, and brand is everything for a company like Apple, largest company in the world, all based on a brand, and the brand is recognized as caring about the users more than anything else. It started with products. One of the nice things is if you can build a product and say, here's what it does, here's what it's worth, you buy a product and it does it forever. No, but then we play this game, everybody gets suspicious. I have to get a new account and a new password and a new subscription, and I have to agree to pay so many dollars per month. People are getting wary of that. People are starting to say, that's not what I really want. But the newcomers, they don't know what it was in the old days when we had real physical objects and, good things. So AI, I'll tell you one thing. Okay, and I've been driving EVs, a few different high-end EVs, and they all talk about having AI to help them choose the routes and to steer and to stay in their lanes. And I can't tell you how many times my cars have tried to kill us on the road. Deliberately, absolutely, deliberately just trying to crash right into a truck next to us. And we have to take control scared. So we try to drive without those features. They've got to become very reliable, and I know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, my cruise control sometimes just halts to a brake. I'll be going, I'm going to go English, 75 miles per hour, and all of a sudden the brakes will squeal on, the dogs will get pushed to the front of the car, and I'll be down, down, down. If there's nobody behind me in the rearview mirror, I'll let it go all the way down from 75 to 25 miles an hour before I accelerate again. This is, you know what, in the old days, you bought a product, you put it in a drawer, you put it in a closet, and 40 years later, it worked and did the same thing. And we've got away from that. We've got to convince that that's what we're supplying to people and not something that's going to be replaced in a few years. And you got to keep updating it. That's one thing that software allowed us to do. And in the automobile world, it's kind of horrendous. I mean, you mentioned Korea, and I admired Korea for the last few decades as just the source of, you know, great thinking and new products, semiconductors, flat screens, car companies, you know, up the value-added scale of economy. And we live in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is a county in the United States, one of 10 counties in the entire country where more than half the people speak non-English at home. That's because they came from all the brilliant people of the world. A lot of Koreans, Japanese, a lot of, you know, Indians, a lot of Vietnamese and the like. And so we're very used to where a lot of the brain power of the world is. And a lot of it boils down to early education, where it was very important to educate very thoroughly in these countries of Southeast Asia. And that's the way I think about South Korea very often. I just, whoa, these people are going to be the brightest people in the world making the best products.
Thank you. That naturally leads us to the next questions. So in the age of AI, as you mentioned before, building competitive AI requires a large amount of data, manpower, and infrastructure. So all of which are heavily influenced by financial capital. So this is challenging for companies trying to compete with global tech giants that benefits from massive economies of scale. So do you believe it's possible for companies with less capital to not only survive but thrive? And in your view, what are the critical factors that can help smaller players win?
I have always believed in the importance of small players coming into a big marketplace. Look what we did with Apple. The big, huge companies, IBM, all the mainframes of the world, and even the mini computer companies, middle-sized computers, running companies, and they said that these little personal computers, based on little microprocessor chips, were going to be nothing. They're not going to be important money-wise, which really made it easier for us to get noticed. But and Hewlett-Packard, where I worked, I desperately wanted to give them the formula for the personal computer because I created it. And I wanted my company to build the personal computer, and they turned me down 5 times.
Gosh.
They were a computer company. Personal computer would have been great. They lost some sleep over it. And they just sort of said in the end, Bill Hewlett told me, hey, win some, you lose some. Steve Jobs and I had to start our own company to do it. But we believed so much that we were giving the world something powerful. And could we see that it was going to grow as large as it has? When we started Apple, the amount of memory that held one song cost close to $1 million. Do you think we saw that we're going to have 1,000 songs in the palm of our hand someday? So no, and smaller players coming in from everywhere. In the last 15 years, as I travel the world and meet people in technology and in governments and in companies, and they all want to figure out how can we create a Silicon Valley where we are. And my answer has always been, wait a minute, Silicon Valley didn't come about because of where it was so much as having a lead in the technology that was going to be important. You saw notice about the transistor being developed in 1947. William Shockley, one of the Nobel Prize winners for developing the transistor, moved to Mountain View, California, Silicon Valley, and started a company to make those transistors before anyone else in the world. And his company eventually hired engineers. They learned how to make transistors. They eventually disbanded and formed their own company, Fairchild. And then they were making better transistors and more, and eventually they figured out the formula to make chips, to put more than one transistor on a chip of silicon. When I was 7 years old, I grew up in Silicon Valley. When I was 7 years old, I went to an electronics show, And one of the people at one of the booths showed me a picture on paper, like a billboard, and it had these little squares and roads between them. And he said, this is going to be a chip with 6 transistors on it. Going from 1 transistor to 6. Oh my God. Oh, I asked my dad, are we going to have better 6 transistor radios? And he said, no, no, no. Only the military and the government can afford these things at first. You know, they're way too expensive. I said, darn, I want normal people in their normal homes to have technology give them more in their life. But I didn't tell my father openly. I just thought it in my head. And it turns out that, you know, Silicon Valley was also involved with Lockheed Martin in the space race. There was a huge space race, United States, Russia, United States, Russia. Russia was in the lead. We had to catch them, and we had to get to the moon and all that. The space race involved rockets decades and decades ago, like 1960, and every fraction of a gram of extra weight for like an extra transistor, every fraction of a gram cost tens of thousands of dollars to launch back then. And these little chips were the solution to putting 6 transistors on a chip, 10 transistors on a chip, 100 on a chip. You saved so much weight, and it was so much worth the money, so that the military and the government could afford it. And you know, and so it's hard to see this, but the technology is always going to, almost every change in technology really is going to help us. Now we feel a little bit like, are we as important as the technology? When Apple was coming out with those mouse-based computers, I said, who's more important, the human user or the technology? And it was always, we stood for the human being more important. Make those machines easy, make them work in natural human ways, intuitive ways. But these days it almost feels like technology is so important, I have to do everything the way the technology tells me to do it. So, so sometimes we lose, even when we're trying to make things, you know, better for users. We're really trying to make them better for the companies. The big companies are so huge, and so powerful, and have the money to invest in new technologies like AI, and put the money in. Money is always needed to develop new technologies, and some of them are rushing. They might be rushing a little fast. One thing I see playing out right now, if you go back to 2000, there was this idea that we could have apps on our phones, and we could, everybody who had an idea for an app on the phone or on the web, anybody who had an idea could get funded. The funding sources, the venture capitalists of Silicon Valley put tons and tons of money into lots of companies, and by 2001, they kind of all failed. And they weren't failing because all the things they were talking about, our entire life, they were saying our entire life's going to become digital. Well, it is now. They were right. But the trouble is, human beings can't adapt to a certain amount of change instantly. There's a certain level that you can go through. So a lot of those companies just got ignored and they lost money. You could drive anywhere in Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area, the whole San Francisco Bay Area, anywhere, any day. The streets weren't crowded. People moved out. San Jose, center of Silicon Valley, lost population only one time in its history, 2003, during that dot-com fall off. Yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of the focus right now. Everybody's got to invest in this one technology, AI, and I think we should go a little slower.
I can imagine if Hewlett-Packard accepted your offer in an early age, what happened?
Could you repeat that one?
Yeah. I said, I cannot imagine if Hewlett-Packard accepted your offer in your early age. Because, yeah, what happened?
Yes, no, we knew we were building something good, and we also knew that we had the best going in the world. That was important to drive us into founding Apple. When you know that what you have is better than everything else. We were 5 years ahead of the rest of the world because they were trying to build small, affordable computers that were identical one I had built actually 5 years before of my own design. And so we just had the world, you know, our product that we started Apple with, it didn't come from marketing. came from engineering. I got so tuned to exactly what chips were made, how you could combine them with wires, how you could make something with the lowest cost, the fewest parts. And our Apple II computer that we started today's Apple with, the Apple II computer was Atari was trying to start an industry called arcade games. It's kind of important. And I sat there at Atari designing a game for them called Breakout. I designed it. And I said, wouldn't it be great if these games were ever color? And my head did some weird things. I knew all of the differential calculus to design color for color TVs according to the math formulas in the books. But then I thought, what if I put a digital number, ones and zeros, into a TV? And I realized if I did it just right, the TV would think it was color, even though it wasn't. Instead of $5,000 and months to design, here it is. It's sitting right in front of you, and it's $0 for color. So the Apple II was the first time ever, my computer, first time ever that arcade games were color. Think about how that's kind of important. My Apple II was the first time ever, though, that arcade games were software. A 9-year-old kid using a simplified language called BASIC could make red and blue and green things move on a screen and could create a game in one day. Before that, games were hardware. At Atari, you'd have 1,000 wires and a skilled engineer is getting all the signals right on all the wires to make things on a TV. And that would take half a man-year to a man-year to develop a game prototype. No, gaming was changed, and that was really the start of Apple. That product was so far ahead of the rest of the world, it was the only successful product making money for Apple for the first 10 years of the company. Sometimes you get to start out with a real good lead by accident. And so anyway, Silicon Valley, because the inventor of the transistor started there, and as it moved into chips, they grew and grew and grew in importance, and Moore's Law and everything got us to where we are today. We had the first start.
Yeah, so I'll give you our next question. So throughout history, we have seen innovation in hardware driving innovation in software. So even applications like ChatGPT were made possible by increased computational power. So looking ahead, which hardware innovations will have the most significant impact and become the foundation for the next generation of services?
Yeah, very hard to predict technology a generation ahead. When I used to work at Apple on new products, I could usually predict a year ahead because I was working on it. And if I ever tried to predict 2 years ahead, what would be the importance of technology? Other products would come out, other people's thinking from all over the place, and it was almost impossible to predict 2 years ahead. So a generation like 10 years ahead, what's going to be important? I think that the device by which we communicate within our lives, the handheld phone device, is going to remain as it is for the next generation. And I say that partly because look at cars. They were kind of the same from their innovation. For 150 years, a car is kind of the same. It's a body to carry people, it's on 4 wheels, and it goes on streets. And the nature of a car hasn't really changed much. Its shape, only just fine little details. So I think we're still going to be using these handheld portable devices. We think about the new things, quantum computing. Oh my gosh, the claims for quantum computing are more than we could ever imagine. But it's got to be applied to something practical that we need desperately and do every single day. Maybe it will get applied to better AI, making AI much faster. Maybe it'll get applied to, we need faster chips too. Because you look at virtual reality, what an incredible world. But you want to be in augmented reality where you're in another land. You're on Mars. You turn your head and you see something instantly that way. Turn your head up when you see what's above you in this place. That means you need a camera, a resolution, something that has the processing power of a high-powered camera 10 times around and 10 times the other way, 100 times, just to have a decent, make it seem like you really are there. So we still need faster processors. And quantum computing might turn something up. It just hasn't. I've been watching it, it feels like a lifetime and nothing that's practical. Robots and personal robots that will do tasks for us that we want. That's a lot like AI knowing maybe what we want, and that I'm a fan of. and I hope it comes to be. And we've got to be so careful that these robots don't make mistakes, that they don't do the wrong thing, give us bad information, lose their programming. It's going to be very, got to be very recursive, so it always works. The thing I talk about the most these days that peeves me is I just want things to work. I just want them to work. All the time I'm trying something and it didn't work, and I'm sure I took logical steps and I have to go back and figure out what I did wrong and user error. And I just, so when things don't work the way you expect, let's say you have a robot in your house, say, go make me a cup of coffee, and it stumbles and brings you back a hot dog. I'm just going to be very upset at that sort of thing. It's got to be so reliable and trained. I think we have to accept that AI will be imperfect. And we have to learn to accept that it's imperfect and judge it ourselves and fix the things when it comes back and it cites a bunch of cases that never occurred, or the deep fakes. I really worry that a lot of people are going to get taken in on that, like some people have, or it's my mother calling, she needs me to send money right now. Yeah, that bothers me. Personal robotics is one of my favorites, and AI, in a helpful sense, is going to be a big tool. AI is going to be a part of the most helpful software, but needs some understanding. I agree with the A in AI, artificial, algorithmic. I don't agree with the I, because the I makes people think it's intelligent like a human. It's only feeding me stuff that a human friend would feed me. Wrong. We don't know what intelligence is. Our ideas of what intelligence was from tests are very changed these days, but we don't know how the brain's wired. When I went back to college, after Apple was successful, I went back to college under a fake name because my name was well known, and my Berkeley diploma says Rocky Raccoon Clark. So when I went back to college, I went as a psychology major to study the brain and its resemblance to computers. And we don't know how the brain is wired at all. We don't know that our memories are in the brain. We assume it because the processing is in the brain. We know that. We can do a lot of tests to say the processing in the brain. We don't have one test that shows where a memory is. What synapses equal the word corn, the word Korea. We don't know that, and we can't find it. So if we did, we could make a brain. And I worked at one company where the engineers figured out how to make a brain. Takes 9 months.
So, thank you for sharing your valuable insight today. But I have one last thing. To young Korean aspiring to become the next Steve Wozniak, could you share your thoughts on the subject of entrepreneurship?
On what?
Entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Permission?
So, yeah, entrepreneurship. Sorry, my pronunciation.
Okay, right. Well, for one thing, young people that are interested in doing their own things and having a startup company and being one of these, they're heroes that they've been brought up and trained about. They're the most important people in the world to me, because it's from startups and new thinking that isn't just trying to repeat the old. It's from the new thinking. That's where we get new technologies that expand our economics, new economics that doesn't replace other parts of our economy. It's not a zero-sum game. It's new wealth. And that's where it comes from. It comes from very different ideas. And look at around the time of the personal computers, it was kids that hadn't even gone to college finish. Myself and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Paul Allen and so many others, and the Google guys just out of college, and Mark Zuckerberg leaving college for something exciting. Those people are interested in excitement, and emotion is driving them. Emotion is pushing them, motivation. I taught young children for 8 years of my life with no press allowed. And I taught them how to use computers for everyday subjects in school, and my class was full-time. I worked full-time from morning to evening, and up to 7 days a week. This was important to me. No press allowed. And it was just so important that these kids learn the modern digital techniques of the world. But we also said backups. You should always have a backup plan, because if you start a company and it doesn't work, what's your backup? So I had one question in my class to my young students. What do you do if you get a phone call, your mother is at the hospital in the emergency room? And the answer I had was back up your computer and get to the hospital. Anyway, that's like, we started Apple. You know why we started Apple? Steve Jobs and I wanted to make the handicapped people, the disabled people, more equal to the fully capable people. We wanted blind people and sighted people to be much more equal. And look how successful we've been. Everywhere you go, just look over at the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Everybody's walking around like they're blind. We made them equal.
Yes. Okay, so time's up. So thank you for such a thought-provoking discussion today. And being one of the companies navigating the Techno Big Bang, the conversation today has given me much to consider when charting Naver's course in this ever-changing tech landscape. I look forward to more enriching discussions throughout the rest of the forum. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, I'm a big fan of the Technium. I'm always a big fan of working together, everybody doing the parts of technology and economy that they can do best and sharing it and not treating it always as a competition or,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve Wozniak and Ms. Choi Soo-yeon, for an excellent session. Especially those last words were impressive. We will continue our next exciting session titled The Future of AI and Its Impact on Humanity, Fireside Chat with Sam Altman and Ben Nelson at 9:20. Please remain in your seats while we rearrange the stage for our next session. Thank you very much.